Hi, and welcome to Prepping Essentials.
I see a room, a dismal room. Your home. It is entirely lit by candles.
That's not my home. We have electric light.
No. Candles. In the grate there is a miserable wood fire.
What are you talking about? We have electric fires.
Who's looking in his crystal ball?
I've never heard such a pack of lies in the whole of my life. I've never had a wood fire. I use electricity.
You are talking about the present. I am talking about the future. There is a grave danger of your electricity being cut because you are using too much at home during peak hours. And I bet you are too.
Well, hi, and welcome to another weekend, and it's a cold and very, very wet weekend. Indeed, it's been very wet for I don't know how long now. Seems forever. A bit like the drought that we had during the summer. Just keeps going on and on and on and on. But here we are. Did you miss me last weekend? Apologies for the lack of video. I almost didn't do one this weekend, in all honesty. Life has been really crazy, whether that's at work, where I seem to be taking on more and more of it over the last few weeks, whether that's in the general big wide world, and we'll come to that in a minute, or indeed in my personal life. Last weekend, on Friday, I got a call from my sister, hi Vera, if you're watching, to say that my mum had a fall and broken a hip. Now she's 87 in April. You watch me get that wrong now, and my sister will comment in the comment section. Don't know your mum's age. She's old. And so for a normal person, breaking a hip's not great. But for older people, it's a bit more problematic. It's more difficult to recover from that kind of thing. So last weekend was a bit manic and chaotic. I did pop in at the weekend for about an hour at the cabin just to make sure the chickens were fine before I did it's a 2-hour trip to my mum's house and then another, 20 minutes on top of that to the hospital. It's a distance anyway. So yeah, last weekend was just a write-off. This week I have been down the cabin doing little bits and pieces as and when I could find the time, but it's difficult because in the morning it's really dark until it's almost time to start work. And then of course by the time I'm finishing work, in fact an hour before I finish work, it's dark again. So it's really difficult to get in and out to do the non-jobs. So chickens have been taken care of. They're still in lockdown, bless them. But they're getting extra greenery to compensate for the lockdown. I've been doing other little fiddly things, oiling locks, because I know that as soon as the first freeze comes, I'm not going to get the padlocks open. So I've been oiling locks. I've bought some more layers pellets and mixed seed. I'm now well stocked up in here. I can easily go through winter without having to worry whether the farm shop's going to be open or not. So lots of little jobs. I have got a couple that I want to do today. I am late because I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago in the video. The road in and out of the village where my field is, they're having major road construction works, and they're actually shutting off the main road that I use. I say main road, it's not a big road, but it is the main through road. So I've been coming really early while it's still dark to try and do the chickens before they close the road at 8 o'clock in the morning. Today I couldn't do that, so I've had to go a huge long detour route to get here, and I'll equally be doing a long detour route going back home again. But while I was here, I just wanted to do a couple of things related to planting. Might seem a bit weird at this time of year, but you'll know from previous videos and previous years, I've been experimenting to see how late in the year I could continue to plant and harvest, and of course how early in the year I can start after the big freeze. So I've got some potatoes chitted, and I thought, do I try and plant them or do I not? So today I thought, bugger it, I'll plant 2 tubs of potatoes. I did try this, I think it was last winter, and it was a big fail because just as the sprouts were coming out of the ground, the frost came and just wiped them out. But we're going to give it another go this year and see. So here we are at the start of December. I think what we're on now, 4th today, is it, or 5th? I lose all track. I have got potatoes in for another harvest, you know that already, for Christmas. And we'll show you those in a minute. So I'm going to plant some more potatoes. I've also got some garlic which I've been rooting in a plastic bag. So one of the raised beds I'm going to plant a load of garlic as an early start for next year, because obviously it's not going to grow now, it'll just stop during winter, but it'll be there already and ready to burst forth once spring finally arrives. So that's what I'll do. In terms of the video this weekend, it's a bit of a mix match. So there'll be a little bit here at the cabin, a little bit at the house or the garage. Make it up as I go along in general, but that is the aim. For those of you that might be baffled by the intro, because I've gone from the intro talking about the impending winter power cuts to here's me in the cabin talking about planting, a bit bizarre. Hold those thoughts, because all will become clear once I finish here in the cabin and the field. So very, very quick from round. Everything is kind of dormant in the fruit bush arena, dormant for winter. Strawberries are still showing some green leaves, but essentially they're just getting themselves ready for winter. The chilli plants, look at this. Here we are in December, and I've got pods everywhere that are ripened or ripening. Some of them are more ripe than others, as you can see. So you've got a classic example there, not far off being ready, just starting to turn from green. And then we've got various green ones still. So astounded at the amount of chilies that those 2 plants are putting out, particularly since they were kind of engulfed with other plants. And it was a late start for them as well. Outside, it is a bit of a quagmire out here. You can probably see where I've been moving backwards and forwards. It's just turning up the ground. You can probably hear it under my feet, actually. I mean, look at this round by the gate. Polytunnel. Oh, shut that behind me, keep the heat in. It is markedly warmer in here. Markedly warmer, eh? Quite a bit warmer. So potatoes, still doing well. Something has been eating them though. Something's been chewing away. I do keep plucking the odd slug here and there, but I don't know if it is slugs or not. Even the last one that went in has got some decent growth on there. And indeed, it's still got new shoots popping up down here. So fingers crossed. It has been really cold this week, but thankfully it's not frozen. So let's just see how we get on with those. I've got 2 buckets down here, part filled, ready to go. In here I've got some chitted potatoes. So I'm going to give these a go and just see what happens. They might work, they might not. If they don't, nothing really lost. Handful of potatoes. If they do, bargain. We've got fresh potatoes going through Christmas into potentially the new year. Let's see. You've seen me do this a million times before, so no great science to this. Just popping in in layers. Put those. Just bury them slightly in there and make space for the next layer. As usual, I'm going to break up the soil a little bit when it comes out of those bags, because it does get compacted to death in there. But hey, so there we go. Put a few more in each one. And the final topple. So there they are, and they can join those, and we'll see if we get a similar result. Fingers crossed. So I've got one raised bed which has been cleared out. You can see I've got a couple of stragglers here. These are onions from last year. I don't know quite how I managed to miss them. Maybe they were just really late in coming through, I don't know. Anyway, I've got a load of garlic here, so I'm just going to quickly pop these in and get them covered over. We'll see if it helps them having been rooted already, if you can see that in the video. I guess we'll find out in due course. It's very therapeutic, this. You kind of forget, because we're at the back end of the season, what it's like to be planting. I might be tempted to pop an extra couple in this row, actually. They're a bit fairly wide spaced apart, those. So I might just pop a few more in, because I can. I thought I was going to get away with this without getting wet, but you won't hear it on the camera, but the rain has started again. I don't know where it's all coming from this year, I really don't. We've had really two massive extremes of drought, and now continuous downpours. It's just ridiculous. Cover those over. So there we go, that's the raised bed planted out. I'll keep you posted and see how that goes. Don't know how, but the gate bottom hinge has managed to shear all its screws, which is not what you want in this weather, because it's a pain to get it back into place again. But we're getting there. Hopefully that's it. Well, here we are back from the field and in the house. Apologies if there's a bit of background noise. I got really wet and quite a bit muddy actually, digging around with the potatoes and the garlic. So the cabin clothes have gone into the washing machine. Get it out of the way while I can. So the theme of the video really today was about winter power cuts rather than planting in the field. I don't know if you have heard the phrase, history often repeats itself. It's very true, it does. And what we're experiencing now, or we're starting to experience now, is nothing new. This has happened regularly through history. And here in the UK, there are a couple of really quite noticeable dates. First of those was about 9 years after World War II. So 1948, we had quite a harsh winter. And this off the back of a lack of preparedness by government in terms of energy stocks led to a major crisis over the winter of that year.
Undoubtedly, the exceptional weather precipitated the coal crisis, and when the nation was literally threatened with disaster, the power cut was ordered. Pictures taken at Barking Power Station symbolise the effect of the order throughout half Britain, and films made in London typify the way the people responded to the order. In places where work could be done, it was done by the flickering light of candles. In many cafes and eating houses, it was the same. Traffic lights went out. Entertainment, of course, was severely restricted. Only essential workers, as those in hospitals, for example, were still permitted full use of light and power, though even they economized. Austerity now had quite a new meaning, and for hundreds of thousands of people, the effort to keep warm was priority number one. The news was unprecedented in this country, and it was staggering. Stocks of coal, low as they were, could not be distributed in time to save the situation. Ships were loading coal at Newcastle, but many were held up by the appalling weather. Then it grew colder still, and no one could forecast the extent or duration of the crisis. The damage already done could not be assessed, but it was frightening.
So that was 1948, and not a lot changed. Gradually, as the years rolled by, people kind of forgot what it was like to live through quite harsh times and not to have the availability of the grid. So fast forward a few years, late 70s, early 70s. I can remember myself, because I'm old enough, I can remember living through the 1970s, really chaotic time. Globally, there was a bit of an energy crisis going on, lots of conflict in the Middle East, embargoes placed, oddly enough, on the West. Who'd have thought? And the big oil producing countries really reined in supply, and the prices for energy just skyrocketed. Very similar to what's happening now today. We headed towards winter, and because of cost of living crisis, or in some terms, sometimes it was just pure greed on the part of the unions, lots of major industry and government services went on strike. And this happened in the 70s. And a harsh winter again, note that, harsh winter, back in the 48s, in the 70s. That harsh winter, as it approached, trade union activity increased and strikes became more prevalent. Again, government hadn't thought ahead and got stocks of energy in place, ready. And the really hard winter kicked in. And back in the 70s, the government announced emergency measures. That might sound familiar. And they started cutting power, and it was only available 3 days a week. Can you imagine that happening now?
During today's extended power cuts, it was almost impossible for many families who depend upon electricity to cook or to heat and light their homes. Summer camping stoves and old paraffin lamps had been brought out of the attic and dusted down. It was meals by candlelight, but only for those who'd bought them before supplies ran out. It's now almost impossible to buy a candle, a stove or a heater. In ironmongers, it's always the same notice, and orders for fresh supplies have been in for days. At one shop in Redditch, they sold all their 7,000 candles in one morning. Torches and batteries go as soon as they're stacked on display.
Can you put that on for me? Yes, dreadful, isn't it?
But for other shops, trading has come almost to a standstill. Electric fires and other appliances find few takers, even if the sale has been extended. With cold cookers and heaters at home, how are some people getting on?
Why are you asking me? I'm terribly upset, you see, because I've got everything electricity in my place, you know?
So what are you doing for lighting, for instance?
Well, for lighting, I've got candle, very difficult to get candle now, because I'm always late, all gone.
At the candle factories, they're working overtime. Here, at the largest candle makers in Britain, they've doubled production to 1.5 million candles a day. Candle factories abroad are also at full stretch to supply the British housewife. This Dutch firm is sending 2 million candles to Britain. Most are being flown in as large consignments, but some individual shop owners are going to the continent to pick them up straight off the production line. 26 tons of candles, that's another million, are being sent from Tel Aviv. The Israel Candle Company say they will be sending us their entire stock of candles intended for Jewish religious services. At home, a factory in Glamorgan is trying to meet the demand for paraffin heaters and lamps. But, as at most factories, the 600 workers are being hamstrung by the very power cuts they're trying to alleviate. They're limited to a 3-day week under the emergency restrictions. But like the candle makers, they couldn't even meet the demand if they worked round the clock all week.
Now, there's a subtle difference between the 40s and the 70s in that our dependency on coal as a fuel has been wiped out on the back of saving the planet. So all of the coal-fired power stations that we had back then all got cut out. They've been demolished. And our stocks of natural gas, which was our mainstay for producing electricity and indeed for heating homes, were dramatically slashed over the last few years. It was taken for granted that this era of cheap energy would just go on and on and on and on. And we'd never need to have big reserves because we'd just pipe it in or ship it in big gas tanker ships, and all would be well. And this drive towards greener energy, solar and wind, really took hold. And it isn't off the back of saving the planet. There's an ulterior motive for this. And I'll not go there in this video. So we've ended up, again, this year in a bit of a predicament. Again, we've had an energy crisis globally, brought about by our own politicians, it has to be said, rather than lack of availability. Here in the UK, trade unions are becoming more and more militant and striking, which is leading to a knock-on for essential services. And guess what? The media is now reporting that a beast from the east, weather front, is coming in, just in time for Christmas. And it's highly likely that we're going to see a dramatic reduction in availability coupled with a dramatic spike in demand for energy supply. So, what do you think? Do you think we're going to get power outages this winter? Lots of people I talk to are kind of poo-pooing the idea. They're going, oh, well, no, government's got it all in hand. And lots of people that I talk to on a daily basis, they have no memory of what it was like back in the 40s or the 70s, or indeed more recently. The energy grid is really fragile. It doesn't take much to knock it over. I've mentioned in a couple of videos about an incident that happened only a few years ago now, where one of the smaller power stations dropped out due to a mechanical breakdown. And that one little power station, because that suddenly came out of the grid supply, it had a cascading effect on the others. The average, I don't know what it's called, there's an energy level that power stations work to, and it has to be constant all the time. And if it suddenly dips, I think it's for more than 8 minutes, the entire grid starts shutting down one by one by one by one to save an overload and to burn out the power station. And this happened. It happened a couple of times over the course of a couple of years. And the whole of the UK at one point just lost its power for a day. Imagine that happening now, where everything we do in the house now is in some way, shape or form dependent on the electrical grid. People have got lights, cookers, washing machines, the central heating system, all connected on an app on the phone. So it doesn't take much for things to just suddenly die. And mains power outage is definitely one way that it can happen, and happen very quickly, without any warning at all. The government and the media have, if you've been watching, been drip feeding little suggestions that, oh, everything's all right and we don't think it'll come to that, but you never know. If worse came to worse, we might start to look at rationing of energy supplies. It's been in the media several times. They just keep dropping it in every so often. Not enough to cause a panic, but just so that if it does ever happen, they've got something to point to and say, oh, I told you so, you should have been ready for this. We did warn you this could happen. So what do you think? Will it or won't it? Who knows? But if it does, are you ready for it? So I thought today I'd just pop in a few suggestions, things to get you thinking about items that you might want to have, if you don't already have them, to get yourself ready for if the worst happened and we had a national grid or even a local grid outage and your house or workplace suddenly just descended into darkness. So first on the list, and probably the most obvious, is light. We've all been there, sat in the house, the lights go out and then you start fumbling around in the dark. So be ready for that. Have a torch to hand. Doesn't have to be the biggest, brightest searchlight on the planet, so long as it will get you around the house to find the things that you're going to need to get through the power outage. I've got lots of different types of torches, but I guess the one that springs to mind most readily is a head torch. With a head torch, you can actually focus the beam where you want it by moving your head and keep your hands free to open the drawers, the cupboards, etc. And to perhaps get out those candles. Candles are great. They last a long time. They're very, very cheap. Be safe and put them inside some kind of glass container, but they'll last for hours. Even the small tea lights last for hours, and it's surprising how much light they do actually throw out. So, torches, candles, number one on the list. Next on the list, a source of ignition, producing a flame. Matches and lighters. I kind of steer away from matches because they're difficult. If they get damp, they don't strike. You can get waterproof ones, and I do have some in my bug out bag, but good old lighters, really, really cheap. Rather than the small, short lighters, I'd be inclined to get a long reach one. You've seen me lighting the fire in the cabin with that numerous times, so you know what I mean. You can actually put the end of the lighter to the thing that you want to actually set on fire, whether it's a candle or the wood stove, and it's away from your fingers. You're not going to burn your fingers. So source of ignition for lighting candles, and also for the next topic, I guess. So next on the list is heat. Got to keep warm. Central heating goes out, it's going to get cold very, very quickly. Lots of options here. The most obvious, I guess, that I've got in the cabin is the good old wood burning stove. But with all of the various anti-smoke regulations around the UK, there aren't actually that many people that still have a coal fire or a wood burner. So I think we're down to the portable gas appliances. You've seen both of these. I've got the bigger one on the right in the cabin as a backup source of heat, and I've got the smaller one in the garage, which I'll be using in the house here if I need to. Both of them last for quite a long time. Obviously the smaller ones are in the small gas canisters, last for maybe 2-3 hours before you need to change them. The bigger ones run on your bigger propane or butane tanks, and they'll sit there for days on end. So source of heat. Most of these are self-igniting, but you never know. You might need a naked flame to get them going, but you certainly will for the next thing on the list. So next on the list, cooking. Variety of different options. If you have access to a wood burning stove or a range, then great. Obviously I have in the cabin, but I don't have that in the house. So for me, we're back to good old gas and the small portable camping stove types. I have actually got a couple of these, a single burner and a double burner. The single one runs on the small canisters of gas, a bit similar to the heater that I've got. The other one runs on a butane bottle, so it's obviously larger scale, double burner. So again, the gas appliance is normally self-igniting, but it doesn't hurt to have the source of ignition, so matches or lighters, especially if you've got the wood burning stove. Next on the list, clothing. Connected to heat, I guess, but this is for your body rather than heating a room or the house. Whether you're indoors trying to save on the gas for the heaters, or whether you're outdoors trying to go out and get supplies or do some work around the house, you're going to need some warm clothing. Some people kind of chuckle at the thought of thermals, thermal leggings and thermal t-shirts, but anybody who's been camping or hiking will really appreciate the benefits that these small, thin, underlayer thermal type clothing can provide. And of course, big jacket, and don't forget the extremities. You've seen me down the cabin with the woolly hat on pretty much every video I do on the cabin chat. So don't neglect hat and gloves. Next on the list, communication. And there's a couple of different types of communication here. If there is a big emergency and you lose your mains power, chances are your TV's not going to work. Not unless you've got some backup power supply, and we'll come to that in a minute. So small, portable, battery-powered or hand crank-powered radio, pretty much essential for any big crisis or something hit the fan scenario. I've got a couple of these in my bug-out bags, so that even if I did have to leave the house and bug out, I've got access to comms while I'm on the move, so I can listen in to what's happening, listen in for emergency broadcast messages. And of course, if you're working in a group, even if it's just two of you, then some form of two-way radio. If people are going out of the house, short distance, it's nice to be able to keep in touch. Or if you've got neighbours, friends and family that are part of your group for when something hits the fan, then they should have those so that you can communicate from household to household. Next on the list, some form of alternative means of producing electricity. That's why we've got the crisis, because the mains grid electricity has stopped. Doesn't mean that we can survive long term without some form of generating our own. Whether that's a portable petrol or solar generator to give you almost mains power if you need it, or whether that's smaller scale, such as a solar panel, so that you can recharge those devices that you've been using, torches, head torches, portable radios, things that need batteries, your laptops, maybe your phone's still working, who knows, but it's going to need recharging at some point. So some means of providing alternative source of electricity. Thought I'd round it up with a few miscellaneous items. They are connected to the items we've previously looked at. So things like cooking or keeping warm, heating. Thermos flask. If you're boiling water on your gas stove or your wood burner to make a cup of tea or to get your ramen noodles rehydrated, you're boiling more water than you need. Don't waste it. Bang it in a thermos flask, or indeed make your teas and coffees and bang them in a thermos flask. so that you don't have to keep getting the cooker out and wasting that gas. Thermos flasks are great. You can get lots of these and have a substantial amount of hot liquid, whether it's tea, coffee or just plain water, and it'll stay warm for hours afterwards. Connected to clothing and heating, it's going to get cold at night. You don't want to be running your heaters all the way through the night while you're asleep and wasting that energy. So double up, get sleeping bags on your bed as well as a quilt, or get lots of wool blankets. Really handy to have and really help you save that valuable energy rather than trying to heat your home through the night while you're sleeping. So lots of items there, and hopefully that's a little bit of food for thought for you. The way things are right now with the chaos with rising prices and availability due to lack of supply chain, it's really more important than ever that if you haven't got these things, to really start looking into getting them. Don't wait until the winter comes. We're already starting to see in America big dumps of snow, forecast here in the UK for this week, big dumps of snow. Don't wait until everybody else is running around like headless chickens in a panic, all having the same idea. Oh, I haven't got this, I need to go get it now. Don't join the madding crowd rushing around the shops. Take your time, bit by bit, start stocking up now, and hopefully, if there is a really bad winter this winter, and if the power does, God forbid, start to be unreliable, at least you've got a backup and you and your family can stay safe and well. So, what do you think? Do you think we will see power cuts this winter? Do you think it's all going to go really badly wrong with all of these different conflicts that are being promoted all around the world? Whether it's the Ukraine crisis, whether it's let's attack Russia, whether it's Israel potentially going to attack Iran, whether it's North Korea, whether it's the British and Americans saying we must fight China. Whatever the crisis, I feel fairly sure it's going to be a difficult winter, and that's without the weather. So let us know in the comment section down below, what are you doing to get ready? Are you even thinking about getting ready? Whatever you are doing, wherever you are in the world, I hope you're staying safe and well and enjoying your weekend. Don't let the doom and gloom get you down. Don't panic, prepare. Well, that's it for this video. I hope there was something in there that was of interest to you. If you did like the video, please do click on the like button. Also feel free to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. As always, I welcome any comments, questions or suggestions you might have. Just feel free to leave them in the comments section below. But for now, thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.